Hey there, come on in. Allow me to impart some knowledge I've collected to tell you about my supposed best party for Persona 5. Going into this topic has been a bit interesting. Figuring out a little bit about the game's mechanics through my own testing and forums online has helped me understand why the party I've chosen is the best for going through the game as a first-time player, or someone returning and trying to maximize their party members' stats through other means. I've looked at a list of all defenses for shadows in the game, and with this, I have made a chart full of data using weaknesses as a basis for optimizing baton passes and leading to more technicals, or better synergy flow in battle. Starting off, let's take a peek at Ryuji. Ryuji cannot be undersold on just how powerful he is through normal means of leveling. With physical being his main damage and his high strength stat of 73, we get to see his skills put to the test in crushing foes with little issue. He learns charge to boost his damage output further for more burst damage, so combine it with the synergy of other party members or with the use of technicals, and you have a tank that destroys anything in its path. Up on the screen, I have the major skills I would consider putting on him combined with ones that I would personally consider or trade out depending on what you value. Green are the swappable, or fighting for the 8th slot, and the reds are the keeps. Fighting Spirit is his 3rd awakening skill, and if you question why I put it as swappable, I just personally find it to be more taxing on his SP in the long run. Ideally, we can just sip some coffee and get it back. But in longer battles, if you're casting 80 SP for each time you want to boost his and his team's damage for their next physical attack, you're going to be running low pretty quick. If we have him playing selfishly, we can get 5 times the amount of casts of max damage out of him. It's up to you whether you think it's worth it to be having everyone try and burn that 2.5 times physical or gun damage for each time it's cast, but for me, I find it to be questionable. On to debating Evade Wind. This is a tough one. I truly want to love this, as it does seem to come in clutch. However, being inconsistent is what dampens this for me. It's not 100% guaranteed to avoid being downed, so even though theoretically it is super powerful to avoid his weakness, I just can't justify giving up the 8th slot on a luck factor. Again though, this is up to you and your personal taste or luck. So if you find that it works for you, then by all means keep running it, and become a immune god of all damage. For the rest of the skills, it's for maximizing 1 more turns and shock ailments, which is more directly beneficial to the party in setting up technical damage. Up in the top right, I have data showing his worst dungeons, and Ryuji's worst dungeons are Castle and Cruise. Castle having 6 different shadows that resist electricity or above, and Cruise having 4. On my other list, pull the numbers, and electricity hits 18 shadows effectively, and 30 resist it through the entire game of 128 shadows. This gives him a 14% efficiency while giving him a 23 inefficiency. However, hear me out, physical. He still has his shotgun and melee skills, so why not just charge up and hit them? Overall, electricity seems to not be bad with getting baton passes or setting up for shock ailments to lead to even more damage. No matter which way I slice it, I find myself always using Ryuji.
Panther here, providing backup! For real?
Up next, we have An. An is a fantastic character on the team. I've been doing some thinking about how to weigh risk versus reward with her, and I think I've come up with a unique build for testing. I can't say it's the best, but from my testing, I can say that I find it to be valuable in all situations I've run it through for the endgame. First, let's go over stats, with her highest stat being magic and second being luck. This works wonders because she is an offensive beast with fire magic and also status ailment inflictor with moves like lullaby. She's great for setting up technicals with other party members and consistent with a high luck stat for it. She gets fire boost, burn boost, fire amp, all helping with just adding on every bit of damage she can. Going over her skills, we have a ton that I have on the swappable depending on what you want, mostly being utility or multi-targeting moves. I feel a little bit easier about putting high energy instead of concentrate here, but still saps a huge chunk of SP that could be going to doing more damage in the longer run. That being said, boosting everyone's magic is not a bad idea, considering how everyone usually uses their magic as a baton pass opener for then allowing more damage. So adding on that little bit just helps optimize for everyone. Her Madarunda is extremely useful for cutting down on damage taken, and is never not helpful or going to be a wasted turn to cast. I never find myself stuck with her like she's just absolutely useless just because of her skill coverage, due to sleep being universally useful, fire hitting for the highest amount of weaknesses, debuffs to help, and single party healing just really seals her as the perfect party member for me. Speaking of weaknesses, on my chart, I have fire as the most useful, hitting 21 shadows for weak and resisted by 31 for a universal coverage of 16% and 24% respectively. For my secret testing, I decided to try and use her luck stat as a bit of a Hail Mary, and have found decent luck with it. Using skills like Sword Dance or Brave Blade for 40% and 35% physical crit has helped in opening up opponents where magic can't for coverage. The downside is the HP cost, which can be an issue for physical damage, but if you want less HP taken and a less resisted affinity, we can look no further than Gun. At 17% HP usage and 40% crit and a little bit less damage, one-shot kill is a great accessory skill to help with getting a crit. Combined with the luck stat, I would say that you'll probably hit the universal 60% max crit cap naturally with her. On to her worst dungeon. In the top right, I have them listed as Lab and Cruise, with 6 and 5 respectively. The two final dungeons being her worst ones, it's no wonder I put her in the top 3 for party members. It cannot be underestimated how useful she really is. Fire, gun crit, ailments, debuff, full heal. I mean, is there anything more you need?
Prepare yourself! Feel my rage!
Next, we have Makoto. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. She is the almost universal staple on any team lineup. Healing, buffing defense, nuking. On paper, she doesn't seem to have a lot going on, especially considering that nuke isn't going to be setting up that often for downs. That being said, let's take a peek at her persona trait. Gaia Blessing increases allies' chance to inflict burn, freeze, and shock by 50%. Perfect synergy with the other teammates so far. She has the highest SP of our teammates so far, so she can expand it a little more freely without worrying about maximizing damage. It's not saying that she can't do damage, because nuke hits most shadows neutrally, and is only resisted by only 10% of all shadows. Capitalizing off of technical goals with physical coverage, as well as being able to keep up Makajama, just keeps with her role of supporting others. I should know that in my list I have Makajama marked as green, as Forget is a bit more situational, but by all means, run it if you feel like it fits your playstyle. It is still really useful for her entire kit. Evade Sai is almost not even necessary to get, and hardly noticeable when it does help. Sai just isn't common enough to where I find myself getting downed because of it. Also, with her defense being up and having great endurance and health, I would personally say to just trash that move and pick whatever else you want with her. With her stats being average around the board, I should probably bring up an exploit that makes her even better, but only really comes up if you're filling out the compendium. If you are able to itemize Michael in a fusion alarm, Makoto gets a revolver called Judge's End, which gives her a plus 11 to all stats, as it says on the weapon description. This is false. She actually gets a plus 22 since those stats increased are doubled, meaning she gets at least 70s or 80s for all of her stats. Really quick, let's take a peek at her worst dungeons, and she has 3. Lab, Cruise, and Space. Lab has 2, Cruise has 2, Space has 3 resists or higher to nuke. This isn't really that bad in my eyes. She can still work just fine going through them. With all this in mind, I find that she cannot be stopped and is my pick for the best party member. These are my picks for the best party members, but I do want to put in some notes about the others really quick. First thing to note, usually when we get a new party member, they'll be most effective in the dungeon that they join in. I find this to be incredibly noticeable for Haru. Morgana. He is a tough one for me, because everything on paper is what I'm structuring on to be with how I made her crit oriented, but Morgana falls flat really quickly. His persona skill isn't the most useful, especially when everyone else is healing HP to full, Wind being less useful than the other main attacker's type affinities. His Lucky and Miracle moves have two huge issues, being the low accuracy and then checking for a luck roll. It's too much of a risk for someone who is really only a healer. His debuff is, in my opinion, not that great either. Yusuke, a physical attacker that specializes in accuracy. He gets a good amount of crits, but burns through HP. He can be great if you can get him to outspeed Makoto on the team so she can heal it back by the end of the turn, but without it, he's particularly starting with 1/4 of his HP missing each turn. Some of his physical skills are a bit niche to get max potential out of, and his freeze chance is lower than Shock from Ryuji. I love Yusuke, but I think Ryuji is personally the better choice. Haru. Haru is strong, but spread a bit all over the place. She has so much utility and can hit hard. My main issue is how late you get her and how specific her utility is. She is really good and can see myself swapping her in once in a while. Basai hitting only 11% effectively also feels like you can never get a baton pass off of something that isn't a crit from one shot kill. Akechi. Akechi is decent, but too little too late. You have better coverage by this point and all party members with better openers than him. That's all. Yoshizawa. Too late to make use.